Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1230, August the 24th, 2020, Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's talk about the news of the last 24 hours regarding the Spygate coup. So we have some things to talk about here, particularly on Sunday morning on the Maria Bartiromo show. Lindsay Graham was on again, and he had some new information to bring to us all. So let's go ahead and cover some of those things. First, he told Maria Bartiromo, or rather she heard, and asked him about the fact that Priestep, who was supposed to be interviewed last week, deposed by the Senate Judiciary Committee. Instead, what happened, according to Lindsey Graham, was Priestep's lawyers sent the Judiciary Committee a letter laying out various stipulations and conditions for that interview. And Lindsey Graham said that they weren't into any conditions or anything like that, and so they refused to go ahead with the hearing. And Lindsey Graham says rather what they'll do now is just go ahead and subpoena Priestep to come in. And he says there's not going to be any conditions on that. So there you go. Priestep is a guy who's clearly very nervous, wants to be careful about what he's doing here, but I just don't see any way out for these people. I mean, you can run, but you cannot hide. Everyone's on to you now. So I'm not sure what Priestep, I mean, if he's smart, he would just refuse to come or plead the fifth or whatever. I mean, he just, but this game he's trying to play with, having his lawyers say, well, you can only do this or ask that or whatever. This thing's off the table. This is off the table. That's not going to work, and not at this stage of the game. We're too far into this. And quite honestly, at this point, I think that the congressional hearings and committees would have been of some use 2 years ago, a year ago maybe. But we're so far into this investigation with where we are with Durham. And the whole point with me on these committee hearings, they're only useful to me, really, if they're public. These people need to be brought in front of the public and ask questions. There is nothing classified about any of this that they should have to worry about talking about, sources or methods. It was all a hoax. It wasn't real. There's no real classified information to worry about. It was all a hoax. These people should be brought in front of the committees, just like the Watergate hearings. All the Watergate hearings were done in public view. They called these people in. They set them down and asked them questions. And it was riveting, and the nation was watching. But so much of these hearings have been done behind closed doors. And you lose, the whole point is to get the public to focus on the hearings. You want them to understand what happened. When you're doing all these things behind closed doors, well, you might as well be a federal investigator, or an FBI agent, or a special prosecutor, or something like that. And that's the way they would conduct these things. The Congress is supposed to conduct these hearings in a public forum for the purpose of making them public. So a behind closed doors deposition of Priestep, I don't really, I guess, if you can provide me with the transcripts, but are we ever going to see them? And how redacted are they going to be? And, I'm not that, worked up about it. We're so far into this at this point. A year and a half or 2 years ago, I might have been interested. But now I already know what Priestep did. I know what he was involved in. And the Durham investigation, if it's done thoroughly and correctly, will eventually tell us what's going on. Probably we'll learn about that before we learn anything from the Senate Intelligence Committee. Look, it took us a year and a half, or over a year, to get the House Intelligence Committee testimonies released, and that was only because Rick Grinnell released them. Otherwise, we'd still never have that stuff. So there's no real transparency going on here. We're not learning anything. And if Priestep can't be brought in front into a public hearing, then, I don't know. And it's not that big a deal to me. I want to see the public hearings. That'll get my attention. But behind closed doors deposition with pre-step, I don't know. So, big deal. Big deal. Also, Lindsey Graham's talking about these new documents that he's uncovered, and which show a clear double standard in how the FBI approached two counterintelligence operations. We now know there was one involving the Rotten Reverend Clinton's campaign and her personally. And so we learned that the FBI was investigating a foreign government's efforts to interfere with Clinton's team in 2015. That there was someone within Clinton's campaign, and there were attempts by a foreign government to get illegal contributions into the Clinton campaign, and so they sought a FISA, to get a FISA to, investigate this, a counterintelligence operation. But once the 7th floor got wind of this, they shut it down. Wouldn't allow them to go get the FISA warrant until, excuse me, until the Rotten Reverend Clinton had been given a debriefing. And she was given an actual debriefing, the way it should have been done to Trump. They went to her and said, hey, there's someone within your campaign structure that is right now vulnerable to possible interference by a foreign government trying to deal on illegal contributions. We're not sure if that person is aware of that, if they're part of that, or what have you. And so you should know about this. And of course, that person was fired from the campaign. And we've never heard anything about it since then, whether or not they ever went and got a FISA or whether they did a further investigation. But you can bet that they probably didn't, that it was shut down by the 7th floor. They went and told Clinton, she fired the person, and they probably swept it under the rug and didn't pursue it any further. And of course, why did they do that for the Rotten Reverend Clinton? Well, I bet they primarily did it because they suspected that, as crooked as Hillary is, that she probably knew about it and probably knew about this attempt at getting this foreign money in. She was probably part of cooking it all up. And so they wanted to give her a heads up so that she would know, so that she could change her guilty behavior. They did it to save the Rotten Reverend, because if they would have been seriously wanting to investigate that, they would have gotten the FISA, and they would have been looking at the Rotten Reverend Clinton as well, because she would have been the primary benefactor. So here they probably caught the Rotten Reverend Clinton, and they gave her a heads up, basically, hey, we caught you. We know what you're doing here. Fire that person, and then we'll make it all go away. I think that's probably what happened. So Clinton's lawyers were given the defensive briefing, and the staffer was fired, as I said. Of course, we're just now learning about this. Why are we just now learning about this? Why are we just now learning about this? This is something we should have known a long, long time ago. Just part of the cover-up. Now, of course, we know with Trump, they did the exact opposite. They did the exact opposite. Exact same situation, they do the opposite. It's pretty damning. Lindsey Graham says that as soon as he gets his hands on these documents, which he says will be this week, he is going to turn them directly over to the Durham investigation. It's probably what he should do. At this point, all these congressional investigations are a waste of time. We're too far down the road. The election's coming up. If this stuff would have been going on before the midterms in 2018, it could have been helpful. Now, it's just padding your resume. It's not really getting us anywhere. Now we're so close with the Durham investigation, it's got to be nearing. The investigation has to be getting pretty close to the end. They've laid their first indictment, and there's likely more to come. There certainly should be more to come. I certainly do expect that. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. We had Comey, Jimmy the Weasel, on Deface the Nation. Comey on Deface the Nation. And he was asked by Margaret Brennan about possibly being a target of the Durham investigation, and Comey says that he can't imagine him being a target of the Durham investigation. He just can't imagine that he would be a target of the Durham investigation. He said they were just a bunch of people trying to do the right thing, consistent with the law. So he can't imagine that he would be a target of the Durham investigation. Told Margaret Brennan he has not been contacted in any way by Durham. That's right. I'm sure you won't be either. No need to. Well, no need to talk to Comey. By the way, Jim, that means you're a target. And he also then goes on to suggest that after this investigation, he says there'll probably be an investigation of the investigation of the investigation. In other words, he's suggesting that if the Democrats were to win the election in 2020, they would get rid of Barr, shut down Durham, and launch their own investigation into the investigation of the investigation. Yep, that is their dream. But that's all it is. It's a dream, because it ain't going to happen. Trump's going to win, and he's going to win big. Then they're talking about the voter fraud, mail fraud, election issue about mail-in voter fraud. And Margaret Brennan literally has the audacity to tell Comey in this conversation that there's no evidence whatsoever of any mail fraud, voter fraud, and mail-in votes. No evidence whatsoever. While you literally have open cases in various places in the country, including in New Jersey, they just ruled an entire election has to be overdone because they can't sort it out. It's the idea that there's no evidence that you have fraud that goes on when you have mail-in voting and things like that is just, especially we saw it in 2018. These people are just compulsive liars, or they're completely ignorant and they're just reading a script and they don't know. Maybe Margaret Brennan's doesn't investigate anything or study anything or look at anything. Maybe she just puts on her makeup, goes on TV, sits down and reads what's been written for her on a teleprompter. And that's the extent of her knowledge of anything, is what she reads off a teleprompter. Because nobody in their right mind could make a statement like that. And there's Jimmy the Weasel shaking his head. Oh yeah. We don't have any issues with voter fraud, mail voter fraud. It's just it's a conspiracy theory. I kid you not, man. Comey then says that at the end of the interview that back in 2016, 2017, that they were not trying to elect or not elect anyone. The only problem is with that, the facts say something 180 degrees different. The facts say something completely different. I mean, this guy is, he kind of reminds me of almost like OJ in the sense that you get the sense that Comey is one of these guys who's such a compulsive liar that he actually begins to convince himself that his lies are the truth. He has lied to himself for so long, so often, that he begins to believe his very own lies as if they were true. Either that or he's just a very polished liar and he knows what he's saying is a lie. I have to believe that this guy knows what he's saying is a lie. But it's also possible that he's so psychopathic that he actually believes his lies. No, all the evidence suggests that you are absolutely putting your finger on the scales, beginning with absolving the Right Reverend Clinton from her crimes, even though that wasn't Comey's place to do it. Saying he was they weren't trying to not elect anyone. Yeah, that's why they were running spies into a campaign where they knew there was absolutely no evidence of anything. They knew it was all a hoax. They knew who paid for the hoax. They knew the whole thing. I mean, this guy is completely, again, he's either completely delusional, psychopathic, or he's just a very smooth liar. None of these things are going to help him in this case. And of all the people that Durham absolutely must drop an indictment on, multiple indictments on, in fact, multiple charges on, is Jimmy the Weasel. Jimmy the Weasel was up to his freaking eyeballs in everything. Every bit of this. And he knew everything that was going on. He was micromanaging this thing. My candle burned out, I can smell it. He micromanaged this thing all the way through. And that's what the evidence shows us. And that's why he hasn't been contacted by Durham. There's no need for Durham to contact him. I mean, what's he think? Comey's going to walk in and sit down and plead, say, yeah, you're right, you caught me, I'm guilty, let's have a plea deal? But you don't want a plea deal with Comey. You want to hang him with the charges. You cut the plea deals with the people in the second, third, fourth tier down who can give up someone above them. Comey is the top dog in this thing because they've already said they're not going to go into the Obama administration. They're not going to go to Obama and Biden. And that probably means they're not going to get into that level. Now, maybe John Bash will find, in something to do with the unmaskings, he might find Samantha Power and Susan Rice, and that's a different investigation. But as far as Comey's the top of the heap, pretty much. I mean, you're not going to want to cut a deal with Comey. You're going to want to charge Comey with the full load of charges. You're not looking for a plea deal from Comey, really. I mean, you already know what he did. He's not going to give you any information. You're going to get the information from other people around him, from documents and from other evidence that you have. There's no reason really to talk to him. I don't think there's any reason to talk to Strzok or Page or McCabe or Comey or Priestap. Any of these top people in FBI. I wouldn't need to talk to any of these. These are the people who are my targets. These are the people I want other people to give up information on. So that's kind of how I see it. Again, I'm not running the investigation or anything, but I wouldn't be interviewing Comey. I don't see any upside to it. It's just like Strzok, maybe Lisa Page, maybe she might be someone who could give you something, but if you can get it without going to her. But I think these people at the FBI all have to stick together. And I'm sure that they've talked between each other. I'm sure they know if any one of them rolls, then they all go down. I think that they're kind of bound at the hip. They may not even like each other, but they're dependent on each other to keep the scam going. As long as they stick together and one of them don't give each other up, they might have a fighting chance in a trial. But I don't see it. If any one of those people try to roll on the others are just going to tag team that person. Their credibility is not going to be good as a witness. They're one of the key plotters. I just don't know why you would want to use them as someone you want to flip. I think you want to flip the people below them to get to them. And that's what it looks like is happening to me. So, I mean, I perfectly understand why Comey, Strzok, McCabe, Page, Priestap have not been interviewed. I perfectly understand that. And there's some people over to DOJ NSD, like Laufman and others, who also have not been interviewed as far as we know. And that's for the same reason. These top tier people, the top coup plotters, this small group crowd, they're the targets. And they're likely going to stick together because they don't help themselves by giving up someone above them. Because there's not really anyone too much above them, maybe a little bit, but they're all in the same group. And they're not that beneficial as a witness because they're so compromised. And that's exactly what the others, defense attorneys, are going to say. They'll say, well, he's trying to get himself off the hook. And they're all going to turn on him. And they're all going to say, hey, we didn't know. Like if it's McCabe. If McCabe decides to roll, they're all just going to turn on him. And they'll stick together and point the finger at him. And he knows that. All these guys know the situation they're in. Maybe they're all sitting around wishing, praying to God that they could go into Durham and cut a deal. But they know that if they try to cut a deal, they don't provide much use to Durham as a witness. They don't know what he already knows, so they don't know when they go in to talk to him what he needs. If they go in there and start giving up information and it's nothing that's really worth anything to him, he doesn't really need that, then all they've done is go in and incriminate themselves and get nothing for it. If they go in and they give up information And he says, yeah, okay, I'll work on your plea. I'll plea down if you give me this and give me this and give me this. But the others are just simply going to stick together and point the finger back at McCabe in this case and say, yeah, well, he's dumping on us to cover his own butt. He was the one that was doing all that. We didn't know anything about it. And then the rest of them can all stick together and point the finger at him. He ends up, so he doesn't know what everyone else is going to do. So, I think that that's exactly the situation that you want these people in. If you're Durham, you want them in a state of paranoia, not knowing. The best thing Durham's got going in his investigation is that it doesn't leak, and no one really knows who's a target, who he's looking at, what they've got, what they're going to do. This is probably the it's not knowing any of these things that's probably where the fear and paranoia are coming in, probably driving these people crazy. They know that they're guilty. They know what's probably coming. They just don't know when and from what direction. And that's how you want them. But no, I wouldn't be talking to any of these people. They're my targets. Once you get enough evidence on them to incriminate them, that's all you need, is enough evidence to incriminate them. Everything else and anything else will later come out anyway. So, yeah, I think things are going along exactly the way they should be. I don't see any issues. It's just I wish I would hurry it up. Hurry it up. So let's talk a little bit about this article by Sundance that comes up. And again, I know we got people here who like Conservative Treehouse, Sundance. Some people don't. I'm kind of always been in the middle of the road on Sundance. I take from Sundance what I agree with, and I sort of brush off what I don't agree with. I think there's been a lot of good information that's come out from Sundance, but there's also been his approach. It's just his, not so much the information, but his approach and the way he or she, whoever it is, Sundance goes about it. But he did post up, or whoever it is, posted up that they have had a discussion with Durham's lead investigator, William Altenberg. And of course, Sundance lays out that Altenberg is the one who coordinates all the investigative aspects behind the Durham investigation. Sundance says that he presented all the evidence of the cover-up and revolving around the James Wolfe, the SSCI committee, and the Mueller team. And that's really where Sundance has been hung up for the past 6 months or so. He's really, really locked into this mini conspiracy, what's pretty good-sized conspiracy within the larger conspiracy, which is how James Wolfe leaking the Carter Page FISA, and then he's involved with the SSCI committee in the Senate Select Intelligence Committee, and how that's also intertwined with the Mueller investigation. And his mini conspiracy is how Mueller protected James Wolfe and the SSCI, because they're all in this cabal together, and exposing that would have exposed the coup against Trump. So it's a good direction to go. It's another one of the many sort of sub-conspiracies within the larger conspiracy. I think it's great that Sundance is uncovering this. I think it's great that he's located this investigator and that he's given him this information. I think it's good. It's helpful. I have no problem with that. The positive aspects of it are that. The other aspects of Sundance is that he's also one of these people that's been saying that there is no deal that was cut with Kleinsmith, and I'm just there's no way that can be true, and I don't know why Sundance would be taking that position, other than he just maybe likes to play the skeptic. And a lot of people out there on this story like to be the skeptic. Then you have the other people who are the cheerleaders, and I like to think I'm somewhere in the middle. I try to sort through it and decide. I'm not the total cheerleader that I think the Durham investigation is the end all, and I don't think that it's all a whitewash either. I think it's somewhere down the middle. But I perfectly understand two things. Number one, absolutely Kleinsmith had to have cut a deal to cooperate. Absolutely. There's just no way that they would plead down his sentence to as low as they did and get nothing. It makes no sense whatsoever. It just makes no sense. It doesn't add up. If that were the case, we would literally be talking about a rigged investigation. And I don't think we're looking at a rigged investigation. On the other hand, I'm not, so Pollyanna that I believe that Durham is going to indict Obama and send him to jail, and there's going to be military tribunals, and I don't go down that road. Other people can. It's fine. Everyone has the right to see this thing any way they want to see it. And so, I just do my thing, and what other people do is what they do. And so I'm not going to berate other people for, what they do. It's the way that they're doing their thing. I've been doing it this way for a long time. I'm going to keep doing it this way. And it's the reason why I never went and started talking a lot about the Q stuff. It's not to have a problem with it. I don't care. I don't follow Q. Some people do. That's fine. So it just, everyone has their own sort of way of doing things, and this is just my way of doing things. So, I'm not going to beat up on Sundance. When there's things there that I think are good, I'll agree. When there's things that are not, I'll disagree. And I just vehemently disagree with Sundance when he makes the point that the whole Kleinsmith thing, he's getting hand slapped just like Wolf. We don't know. These federal investigations can take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And as far as plea agreements, you're not going to come out and publicly say what you are looking for in a plea agreement, or even that the person's cooperating. In fact, if they could have done this silently without anybody knowing it, they would have done it that way. They had no choice, because it's going to be public that they are going to indict this person. But you saw this a lot back in the 70s with these mafia cases. They would have confidential informants, or they would have people who would sign plea deals, give information, but they wouldn't disclose any of that. None of that came out until after the very last top tier mobster was taken down. They don't want to come out and say, yeah, well, we got a plea deal with this guy, and he's going to give us all this information. And it's giving too much information to your targets that are still out there, that you're still investigating. You would rather not talk about the fact that you got a plea deal. Everyone can assume that you got a plea deal. Some people can assume that you do not. They'd probably prefer that. But you're not going to come out and say, yeah, we got this guy, and he's going to cooperate, and he's going to sing like a bird. That's you don't want to push that, really. You want to keep that as quiet as possible. You don't want to, make a big deal about that. It only helps your targets, and you don't want to help your targets. You want to keep them in paranoia, in a state of paranoia and fear and unknowing what's going on. Strzok and Page and these guys are sitting back. They really don't know at this point, because they, like us, have not seen any specific plea agreements. They don't know exactly what Kleinsmith's giving them or not giving them. They don't know what Durham's got or doesn't have. This is exactly how you want them. So I perfectly understand why we have not been told, yeah, we copped a deal with police with Kleinsmith, and here's all the wonderful stuff he's going to sing about. Of course they're not going to tell us that. We'll probably not find out what Kleinsmith's deal was until the last person has been wrapped up, when this investigation is over. When this investigation is over and the Durham officially comes out and closes the book on it and says, that's it, that's the end of our investigation, here's the guys we got, think what you want, this thing's over, and that's it. At that point, you're going to learn all kinds of things about who copped deals, what the deals were, when the deals were copped, and how it all went about. You're going to find out a lot of things after the investigation is over, not now. And that's why I don't have any problem with how we're learning about Kleinsmith, whether he's cooperating or not. Of course he's cooperating. Of course he's cooperating. And those people who say he's not, well, they're not serious people, quite honestly. Or they have some other agenda. Sundance did say that Altenberg was polite, courteous, friendly, well-prepared, had his materials with him. He was very detailed on the specifics that they were discussing. He says that Altenberg is what you would consider a very solid investigator, very open and engaging. Well, that's good news. At least we know that we have a competent person running the day-to-day investigation for Durham. That's good news. I'm happy to hear that. Something else, about Kleinsmith, it wasn't just this one thing that he doctored. That's all they hit him on. They could hit him on much more. Remember his own words. his own words from the transcript that we now have, that we've had for a long time now, where he said, quote, to his girlfriend, his boss at the time, Sally Moyer. He said, my GD name is all over the documents investigating Trump. They were talking after Trump wins the election, and Kleinsmith is telling his girlfriend and his boss, Sally Moyer, how upset he is that Trump wins. He tells her, he says, my GD name is all over the documents, plural, investigating Trump. He didn't say all over that document, all over that FISA that I altered. He said, my name is all over the documents, meaning he did more than just that one thing. He signed off on a lot of things. And he's not a little fish. He's in your top third tier there. He's not that small of a fish. He was the assistant general counsel in the FBI that signed off on FISA's confidential informants and all these other things. He was one of those people. And what's extraordinary about Kleinsmith is he was a very young guy in that position, 35 years old, and only been at the FBI for a year. He was appointed in that position by, I believe, Comey. And if you look at all the key players, the top key players, top 5, 6, 7 people over FBI, almost every single one of them was hand-picked by Comey beginning in about 2015. It's almost like Comey said, we need to find all the hardcore Trump haters who will be willing to do what we need them to do, and let's get them in here. We got to clean out any fair, honest, decent people. We got to find the hardcore anti-Trumpers. Priestep, McCabe, Page, Strzok, and Kleinsmith would be one of those. And they probably saw this guy and said, man, he's only been to the FBI for a year. He's a young guy, and he freaking hates Trump. That's exactly the guy we want to be signing off on all this garbage. I think Kleinsmith is starting to realize that he essentially was set up as a fall guy. He's probably realized he was put in that position to do the very dirty work that he did, and he was happy to do it. He's probably realizing now that was the case. Because at some point you got to ask yourself, man, why only being at the FBI for only a year, being very young, how is it that I got put in such a high position, and I was the guy that was having to sign off on all of these things, put my signature on it, so they could all, well, he's probably thinking now, so they could all throw me under the bus in case something went wrong. And that's exactly what's happening. And that's probably why he is singing. He's realizing that he was played as a fall guy. Now, the next question is, who told Kleinsmith to do it? Who told Kleinsmith to do it? He didn't do this on his own. Someone advised him and told him. This guy didn't just sit there and make all these decisions himself. He was told to do the things he did. And he did them. That is the people, whoever told him to do what he did, is the people he's probably singing about right now. So Durham, if he doesn't already know that, is about to find out from Kleinsmith. We also had Lee Smith on American Thought Leaders over the weekend, and he's being interviewed, and he says that he has talked to quite a few agents and defense attorneys who are telling him that it's clear to them that Kleinsmith is cooperating. Clear to them that Kleinsmith is cooperating. Of course he is. Don't let anyone tell you he's not cooperating. That's just BS. Of course he is. So there you go, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. Be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.